Every single phase of private practice has its own unique challenges and its own unique opportunities. Whether you're starting and growing a solo practice, getting a group practice going, whether you're already a group practice boss, or you want to go big and go national with the skills you have, every phase has its challenges. And doing that in community with people and learning from other folks and having that guidance is so, so important. That's why we have a membership community for every phase of practice. Next Level Practice is for solo practitioners to help you get organized, fill up your practice, and get that solo practice rocking. We have small groups, we have accountability partners, we have live events every single week. And also, if in the first 3 months, in the first 90 days, you're not satisfied, we have a 90-day money-back guarantee. Next, we have Group Practice Launch. Group Practice Launch is a 6-month program specifically for you to launch a group practice. We have weekly meetings with that as well as guided courses, and you get full access to Next Level Practice. And you're guaranteed to hire someone in the first 6 months, or you get to go through it again for free. Next, we have Group Practice Boss. Group Practice Boss is for people that have group practices and want to continue to grow. All those ups and downs of having a group practice, of changing that mindset, being in community with other people, and getting that support from us. We, with that as well, have weekly meetings, and you get to come to Next Level Practice events as well. So that's 8 meetings a month that you could come to live to get extra help. Also, there's a 90-day money-back guarantee. Lastly, we have Audience Building Academy. Audience Building Academy is specifically for people that are ready to level up and go national. Maybe you want to get a traditionally published book, have a podcast, launch some e-products and e-courses and scalable income. Audience Building Academy is specifically for you so that you can level up and go national. We'll walk you through exactly how you go from having a solo or a group practice to going national. We'll help you build your email list, get on podcasts, and really level up. So no matter what your phase is, we have a membership community for you. Over at practiceofthepractice.com/memberships, you can read all about them and sign up. Go in there and decide which membership phase is for you and join today. Again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/memberships. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanok, session number 1157. I'm Joe Sanok, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast, where we help you build a thriving private practice that you absolutely love. We have membership communities that you can dig into to be with other therapists at your phase of practice, whether you're just getting going, maybe you want to build a sustainable solo practice, maybe you're starting a group practice or you already have one. We have a community for you. You can read all about them over at practiceofthepractice.com/membership. We also offer individual consulting. We have 5 consultants at the time of this recording. Over at practiceofthepractice.com/apply. You can apply for that over there too. So we help people build thriving practices that they absolutely love. And we're doing this series, the Even Better Year series, with that idea that, it's small steps in the right direction. The first person I heard say it, and I don't know if this is who said it first, was Gary Vaynerchuk, where he said people overestimate what they can do in a year, but they underestimate what they can do in a decade. And now having Practice of the Practice be over a decade old, it was launched in 2012. That's so true. There were years where I'm like banging my head against the wall, just like, why is this not working? Why aren't people listening? Why aren't we getting people applying for consulting? It felt like we were doing really good work. But, we just kept making each year an even better year. It may not be the best year ever. It may not be mind-blowing, but it's a step in the right direction. And that's what this month's all about. This beginning of the year, thinking about what are steps in the right direction. 3 episodes ago, we talked with Dima, who fled Jordan, fled her domestic violence relationship, and talks about that in regards to leadership. We talked about sexual health earlier in the month. with Dr. Lori Brodo, who's from Canada, one of the top researchers there, and so many other really amazing episodes this month. So make sure you go back and listen to some of those. Would love for you to kick off your new year with some of those episodes. Today, we have Soo Jin Lee. Soo Jin is a licensed therapist and executive director of Yellow Chair Collective, as well as co founder of Entwine Community, and has carved a significant path in mental health advocacy, deeply influenced by her experiences as an Asian immigrant. Her approach to mental health care, centered on understanding and addressing the unique challenges of similar communities, has led to her being co author of the impactful book Where I Belong: Healing Trauma and Embracing Asian American Identity. Soo Jin's work has been recognized on platforms such as NPR, PBS, and CBS, and reflects her commitment to culturally sensitive services and the importance of community support in healing and identity formation. Soo Jin, welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, I am so excited to have this conversation. It feels very pertinent at the time of this recording. We're recording this less than a week from the US elections. There's a lot of tension in the air. There's a lot of question in the air. Obviously, when this airs in January, there will be different thoughts and tensions going on. Who knows at that point? But I love also looking at individual experiences. And that's why I'm so excited about your new book and just talking more about it today. So, welcome to the show.
Yeah, likewise as well. I'm looking forward to talking all about it. You're right. There is a lot of energy in the air right now, and we'll see what the energy shifts into the new year.
Yeah. Well, let's start with your story. So, where would you say is one of the best spots for us to start in regards to your Asian American identity story?
Sure. Maybe I can talk about myself as an immigrant. I came to the United States when I was 10 years old with my parents and my younger brother. And at the time, it was also a lot of political energy in the air. And I guess the term Asian American was a difficult one for me to really adapt to, because back in Korea where I came from, you're just Korean. And then all of a
Mm,
sudden, overnight, I came and I was being identified with alongside all of these other individuals that may look like me, but don't speak my language. And I'm expected to speak English and be acculturated into this new society and have to learn all these new forms of being. And so that's an identity that I hold deeply.
yeah, that would be quite the shift, to just like I just thought about that in regards to, yeah, if I moved somewhere and I was lumped in with all Euro Americans, or Euro, people, European descent, to just be lumped in together. Whereas, here in the United States, we tend to be like, I'm Irish American, I'm Polish American. How did that has that shift has that changed where it still just feels like Asian American is the general term for you, or has it become more nuanced where you like Korean American is more, I guess, accepted, or a way that you identify? Like obviously you would always have identified as that, but like do other people like think through that as much too?
Absolutely. So Asian American, that part of identity, I think took a lot of work for me to accept. And I am proud to be able to say that I am an Asian American now. And I'm married to another Asian American as well who is not Korean. And so that learning process of being able to adapt what it means to be an American, especially during this time, right? And to be able to accept what it means to be an Asian American in particular has been such a journey.
Mm.
Again, I have a difficult time sometimes going back and forth between I want to be able to just say I'm Korean still because I'm born Korean and my parents are still monolingual and immigrants in Korean, and so that's a part of me that I hold and try to balance within myself when it comes to my identity. The thing that really helped me and evolved me into being able to accept myself as an Asian American is all the different contexts and perhaps some of the historical elements and friends that are also identifying in the community as Asian Americans, and to be able to share the similar struggles. And that's exactly what I noticed within the clients that I started working with as well. People
Mm.
were finding me as a therapist because I looked like them. And in a lot of ways, because of that, there's both pros and cons. There is that expectation that I would understand them immediately because I look like them.
Mm,
But oftentimes, we all come with our individual experiences. And as therapists, we know how dangerous that can be, also, right? When we are just identifying ourselves as one way and expected to understand each other because of that identity. Um, but on the other side, this in that same line, right? There is a similar understanding as well, that there is an individual invisibility that we have all experienced because of the way that we look, because of the way that we have been brought up, due to our cultural and racial identity. And so those understanding can get unpacked in the therapeutic room, whereas a lot of people might say that that's something that they haven't thought about with another therapist.
Tell me more about that invisibility.
Yeah. So for Asian Americans, oftentimes, especially like I mentioned, given that I am Korean American, which means that I'm East Asian, so I'm identified as more of the lighter skinned Asian. And in this hierarchy of the American culture, it means that I am sort of in the privileged realm, but not yet quite being able to also have that expression of privilege. As East Asian Americans, we've also been historically put on the pedestal with a lot of microaggressions and expectations of what we call model minority myth, which means that we're expected to succeed in certain subjects like math and science, right? And so we're put into these boxes, and it's as if our own culture have also adapted and acculturated to that box, and we can't get out of it. And so for a lot of Asian American clients that I work with, and for myself as well, the expectation from childhood has been, well, you're going to become a doctor, you're going to become a nurse, or you're going to become a lawyer. That's the expectation. And it's really hard to get out of that box. It's out of survival, it's out of our history, but also, it puts this invisible layer of who we need to be or who we should be.
Hmm. Yeah, it seems like I'm hearing like it's like a tightrope walk of recognizing your individual experience and individual culture and all of that, while also it sounds like having some experiences that tend to be fairly universal in regards to the Asian American experience.
Exactly. Yeah. What the term that you had just described of like tightrope is something that feels very it really hits home for me, and probably a lot of the clients that I work with.
Mm. Now, in your book, Where I Belong, Healing Trauma and Embracing Asian American Identity, as you walked through the writing of the book, are there certain stories of yours? Like, I know when I wrote Thursday is the New Friday, there's certain stories or research that just kind of hit me differently and personally affected me through the writing of the book. Are there stories or things you discovered either about yourself or past trauma or just anything that just kind of like, ooh, wow, that hit me in the chest differently than I thought as I write this book? Are there things that kind of pop out that fall into that category?
Yeah, absolutely. The very first sentence in our book, in the introduction, rewrites that according to the social tracking of Asian Americans in the 2023 Status Index survey, nearly 80% of Asian Americans reported that they do not feel as though they fully belong or are accepted.
Hmm.
80%.
Dang.
So that really shifted the way that we wanted to reframe the book, and also just the way that we were structuring the book as well. So the book comprises of a lot of different individual stories. And I think, Joe, your podcast is this too, is like you talk about people's stories. It's a lot of it is storytelling, right?
Hmm.
And I realized that that portion was so important and missing, in order for us to feel and bring together that sense of belonging and acceptance, is to be able to hear about other people's stories and their lives and share them in a communal way and hold them together. And so the book, we wanted it to be read kind of like if you were sitting in a support group where you're hearing each other's stories and lives, relating to it, being able to reflect your own stories through other people's stories, and then have different tools and journaling prompts to help you to actually go through that reflection of your own.
Hmm. As a therapist, I can tell you from experience that having the right EHR is an absolute lifeline. I recommend using therapy notes. They make billing, scheduling, note taking, telehealth, and e-prescribe incredibly easy. Best of all, they offer live telephone support that's available 7 days a week. You don't have to take my word for it. Do your own research and see for yourself. Therapy Notes is the #1 highest rated EHR system available today, with a 4.9 out of 5 stars on trustpilot.com and on Google. All you have to do is click the link below or type promo code Joe on their website over at therapynotes.com and receive a special 2-month trial absolutely free. Again, that's therapynotes.com and use promo code Joe on the website. If you're coming from another EHR, Therapy Notes will also import your demographic data quick and easy at no cost, so you can get started right away. Trust me, don't waste any more of your time and try Therapy Notes. Just use promo code Joe at checkout. I remember when I was in my 20s, I was raised in northern Michigan in Traverse City, and it's a very white part of the country. We have a Native American reservation that's close by. We have some kind of seasonal workers, but for the most part, it's very, very white. And so when I went off to college, I had a lot of great new experiences with people that were from very different backgrounds from me. And I remember this one time coming back home, and I got my hair cut from someone who was Vietnamese, and she was talking about how hard it was to feel brand new to this culture, first generation. But then also when she would go back home, that it's like she didn't fit there either. And as a young person, it was one of the first times that I really felt like someone kind of poured out just like the difficulty of the immigrant experience. And it made like total sense. But it was like this person just talking about how just challenging that was to be in a culture here that, she didn't fit in with right away. And then also going back home and feeling like things had really like changed in her where she didn't fit in there either. Would you say that, that seems like, anyone that goes into a new culture that you're going to shift in a way that it feels like you don't fit in several different areas. And you saying that stat about 80% of Asian Americans kind of feeling like they aren't fully accepted. What do you think needs to improve or change to help with that?
Mm, you know, there's two ends, I feel like, with this. One is, as you mentioned, the story that you share, that identity piece of not feeling like you're either Asian enough or American enough, or like for me, like not feeling like in spaces where there's a lot of Koreans, or going back home to Korea, like I feel like I'm no longer Korean enough. And then coming back
Mm,
here to my own, people and amongst my friends, and saying, well, I don't really feel like I'm American enough. That enoughness is something that is a huge internal struggle for our identity and our culture identity. And so to be able to, I don't want to say overcome, but to be able to recognize perhaps when those inner language is coming up for us and saying, you're not good enough to be this or that, right? Is something that I would love to be able to address within our culture, society, right? And then greater beyond our inner work as a society, as a culture, the acceptance of what Americanness even means, right?
mm,
As historically, we are all collectives of different people that come from all over the place, that have had no place to practice our religion, spirituality, to come here to feel safe, right? And along the way, somehow I feel like as Americans, we've lost that sense of safety. And I
Hmm.
don't know how or why that came to be. And maybe that's very appropriate for what we're talking about today as well, in terms of the political scene, right? We have such extreme views, and we want to come together in the middle ground again and create that sense of safety amongst ourselves. How do we do that, right? And I think you are doing a really great job of creating these podcasts also. And what I went back to about my book as well is to see individuals as just who they are, as that individual, and not putting people into these boxes and expectations and the labels. Yeah.
And I think that's such a great transition into like the therapist listening because, and I think it's that similar tightrope walk of seeing the individual as individuals while also then asking about their own cultural heritage and the things that are, their experience. Because, we all have our own implicit bias as to this person is probably like this. And realizing that that person, can actually just share with you if you ask in an intake session as to what's important
Mhm.
when you look at your intakes or when you look at talking to other therapists or even doing these book tours, for therapists in particular, what would you want to shift or adjust in regards to how they do a more culturally competent intake to walk that tightrope with that client?
Yeah. Perhaps some of the language that we use can shift into more of the individualized. And I think, like you mentioned, a lot of the times with the intakes, especially for therapists that are coming from a different cultural background than the client that is sitting in front of them, there's a lot of fear in being able to ask about their cultural identity and their upbringing and how that culture or race plays into the family dynamics and their values, right? And even what we mentioned in the broader sense of their sense of belonging in the world. And I think it's okay to be able to ask those things. And those are big questions to be asking, perhaps from the get go. But I think there's a lot of leeway in even just the questions that you have already prepped in the assessment to dig into those topics. And so to not have fear.
Mm. Yeah, are there if someone's creating their intakes, are there specific questions that you think are essential to have in those intake conversations in either the paperwork or in the intake session?
Let's see. I know for a lot of the therapists, they're in the intake questions, there's questions about trauma. And they often ask, have you experienced trauma? Or, what are some of the traumatic experiences you have had in your life? Uh, for the clients that I work with, especially in the Asian American community, there's so much stigma. And even the term trauma can be very, very triggering. And the thing that I often find is if I'm just directly asking them about, have you experienced trauma? Oftentimes it's a no, because the microaggressions or the difficult things that they have experienced in their lives, such as even that immigration journey that I've mentioned to me, that plane ride plays in my head over and over again. And it has defined the way that I view the world, right? That shift that I had in my life of moving to another country. And because we have had to make adjustments, we are in that survival mode in the moment. We don't define it to be traumatic. And even the way that we define PTSD, right? It's very poignant to one particular event in our lives. And so to be able to perhaps redefine that for them and ask questions such as, is there any um, emotional distress that you have been experiencing in your life? Is there something that is repeated over and over again in your life? Are there any difficulties that you have experienced in your life? Are there any challenging things that you have experienced in your life? Can be another way. It's a shift in language, right? To assess for these elements.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that shifting because even just thinking about, if someone has been through trauma, are they going to right away on the paperwork feel like I'm going to list all that out and go through that without a therapist there? Versus even just that shift in language, I think is so smart, to just say, are there things that keep replaying in your head? It just feels like a softer way to enter into some of those conversations.
Yeah. Another thing that I like to ask is, do you know about your immigration journey? And it's something that is often not in a lot of people's assessments. And it might just be a yes or no question, and then we can dive in deeper into it. But it brings up a lot of different culture and racial identity issues that come up just by asking that question. Do you know about your immigration journey or your
Hmm.
family's immigration journey?
Yeah, it's really interesting, to think through that, because my like story of my parents and their parents' immigration journeys has totally shifted in the last year or two, and it's kind of a typical American one, or a typical Euro American one, um, but even just discovering more of that has kind of changed how our family views ourselves, and so. What are things that are important in, kind of assessing the immigration journey that you look for as you're talking specifically with Asian Americans?
Mm, first things that I'm looking for is that, especially for Asian Americans, in just historically in Asia, and I mean America too, it's the history consists of a lot of war and displacement. And so, what I'm looking for is their upbringing and the way that they have ended up in this country. So, whether as refugees or immigrants, there's a huge difference also. Did their family decide to come to the United States, or did they have no choice but to end up here? And what does that mean for that family? And what kind of narrative did that bring to them about their own identity as well?
Hmm. So, as you reflect on your book, and thinking about discussions around trauma and embracing Asian American identity, what things stand out that we haven't talked about yet?
One of the things that we go into the book far in is this idea of self compassion, and it's a new language for a lot of the clients that I work with, especially people like I mentioned, where we feel like there's no sense of belonging or acceptance. To practice and to learn the language of self compassion, to be able to tell ourselves it's okay to me, right? Not to anyone else. Uh, and that's very new in our culture. And then at the end of the book, we try to end with what we call celebration. There are so many ways where intergenerational trauma, racial trauma, is framed with only negativity. And we could see why, right? There are a lot of symptoms that are impacting us in a negative way in our lives currently. And so that language continuously gets wrapped around in a negative light. But really, when it comes to our immigration journey, as we talked about, and our cultural identities, there's also a lot of things to celebrate. And so, what we're proud of as Korean, what we're proud of as Asian Americans, and what we're building together, what are we hope for the next generation as we continue to evolve in our identity, is the work that I like to bring.
Hmm. Now, tell me a little bit more about the collective, and tell me about Entwine. Like, tell us about both those projects.
Yeah. So the Yellow Chair Collective, we are a group practice, and we're servicing multiple states right now: California, Oregon, Washington, New York, and New Jersey. And we're a collective of Asian Americans, Asian American therapists. We came to be not exactly because we wanted to serve the Asian American exclusively. It was more of in the midst of the pandemic, when there was heightened anti Asian hate crime on the screens. There were multiple community members and leaders that were reaching out to us because my co director and I are Asian Americans, and they wanted education around how to support the people that were feeling traumatized. And how do we do that in a way that felt culturally appropriate to them? There's also a lot of language gaps when it comes to serving the Asian American community. And I identify as a bilingual clinician. And so that was a resource that people were also looking for. And so when we started doing that work, we realized that one-on-one therapy was absolutely needed. But what was missing is because people were so isolated in their journey that we needed to bring together community groups. And so we started these community groups, support groups online first. And through that, we built these resources and language capacities of other Asian American identifying individuals and therapists and community leaders to be able to serve the community. And so we were just responding to what was the need of the time. And then we just kind of grew from there. Because more and more through that experience, I think one of the things that the pandemic had brought into light for the Asian American community is that they wanted to better understand their racial identity and their racial trauma. And so then we started the Entwine community alongside with the Yellow Chair Collective as a nonprofit to be able to train the next generation of therapists to be able to first have a safe space to discover their own racial identity and intergenerational trauma. And then to second, to have a teaching and practicum site to be able to practice that with the clients. And so the Yellow Chair Collective is the sister organization of the Entwine community.
So awesome. Well, Soo Jin, if every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want them to know?
I would want them to know that as you're starting your private practice, to not forget why you became a therapist in the first place.
Well, if people want to get your book, if they want to connect with you, where should we send them?
Yeah. So yellowchaircollective.com is where you can get all of our information about me and our practice, and then about our book as well.
Sounds awesome. We will send people there. Thanks so much for being on the Practice of the Practice podcast.
Thank you so much.
So go check out that website, check out the book. So excited to have so many awesome people this month as part of this series. Make sure you listen back to other individuals that are in our Even Better Year series that's going on this month. Next month, we're going to have Marketing Month, where it's going to be all marketing all month long. So if you're looking to grow your practice through marketing, just know that February is going to be Marketing Month. And we couldn't do the show without our amazing sponsors. Therapy Notes is our sponsor today. They are the best EHR out there. They will help you transition from your current EHR seamlessly. They have embedded HIPAA-compliant video, billing, all of it makes it so streamlined in your practice. Use promo code Joe at checkout when you head on over to therapynotes.com. That will give you a couple months for free. Thank you so much for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music, and this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.